Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Roerig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are going to be doing a Weird Al spectacular event. We're going to be talking about Weird, the Al Yankovic Story, the recent movie that came to the Roku channel starring Daniel Radcliffe as the titular character of the beloved comedic musician Weird Al Yankovic. We decided, hey, if we're going to be talking about Weird Al, why don't we just go back a bit and rewatch an old classic? And so we rewatched
his film debut.
Yes, we rewatched UHF, which is an old classic comedy starring Weird Al, written by Weird Al and his co-writer. And so we said, let's do that too. So we're going to be talking about that as well. Both of those in full spoilers. We also have some news to go over and some stuff to look forward to on the horizon. So let's get started with our news segment, On Beat. On Beat is where we talk about the week's news, and we're going to kick things off with some box office news. Haven't talked about box office news in a while. We don't like to talk about it every time there's like a number one movie or something. We just like to do it when there's like some sort of records being broken or something significant. And so this week we're checking in because Black Panther Wakanda Forever just released in theaters this last weekend. It made $192.4 million domestic. These are numbers up to date with Wednesday, November 16th, as we're recording this. So these aren't the weekend numbers. These are like up to Wednesday, basically. But it did $192.4 million domestic, $342.7 million global. That makes it the biggest November opening ever of all time. That's beating out Hunger Games Catching Fire.
That beats out Eternals.
And it's the second biggest domestic release of the year after Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which did $187.4 million. And that was a summer movie. It is the third biggest post-pandemic opening after Doctor Strange 2, which we mentioned. But then in number one is Spider-Man No Way Home, which did $260 million in its opening weekend. Significantly higher than either of those. But that was a huge deal when that came out. So yeah, Black Panther Wakanda Forever doing really well.
Yeah, good to see.
Also, we decided to check in while we're doing box office and to see how Black Adam is doing, because Black Adam was doing really well, was being reported as being very successful. It wasn't as big as I thought it was based on the way people were talking about its success. Black Adam has now done I think it's been out for like over a month now. It has now done $151 million domestic and $352 million global. That's like less than Black Panther has already done.
Yes. From what I understand, that's decent, but yeah, it's not Marvel blockbuster level.
People were talking it up, and then when I actually looked at the numbers, I was like, oh, wait, those aren't that big.
Yeah.
Again, the Black Adam numbers we're mentioning are not their opening weekend numbers. Those are their totals so far. So apparently it's done well, which is good. It just hasn't done as well as Black Panther, which
apparently,
was phenomenal.
The Rock's star power, apparently there's limits to that.
Yeah. His star power cannot match that of a anti-vaxxer.
I don't know. You gotta get people hyped up. I feel like people weren't really hyped up for Black Adam.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, I think people aren't hyped up much about DC in general right now.
Yeah.
So they're kind of in different playgrounds in a sense, Marvel versus DC there. But I mean, it's still good numbers. It's just not, as good as I had heard. So I was a little bit surprised by that. Next news story we have up talking about numbers. Nielsen has compared their data between House of the Dragons and Lord of the Rings of Power. They're two big fantasy shows that came out around the same time. People were heavily comparing the two. Nielsen's got their data, which is Nielsen data. So if you're not really aware of that, it's not 100% accurate. It's you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt, but it's about the best metric, the best like unofficial metric that exists for this kind of stuff. But there's some interesting comparisons they made. They showed that Rings of Power actually beats House of the Dragon in their numbers, but that is excluding the last 2 episodes of House of the Dragon because Nielsen didn't have their data together for that at the time that they wrote this report. They didn't have it available yet. So, but at the time, before the last 2 episodes of House of the Dragon, Lord of the Rings and Rings of Power beat House of the Dragon in its total viewership, according to Nielsen, which is kind of surprising because you hear way less chatter about Rings of Power than you do about House of the Dragon. And most of the chatter you do hear is kind of relatively negative about Rings of Power. It's kind of the fanatics have kind of drowned out all other conversation when it comes to that show.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But what can you do?
But it's kind of interesting because Amazon had reported really huge numbers for Rings of Power, and people were questioning that like immediately, like how accurate that actually is, and if they were, fudging their numbers a little bit. But Nielsen's data seems to be backing that up a bit. They also showed that there's an interesting pattern when you look week over week at both shows, where House of the Dragon's numbers had a pretty consistent rise. Like, I think one week it dipped, but only a little bit, and every other week it rose week over week. It's like a diagonal line heading north for House of the Dragon, whereas Rings of Power kind of had like more of a bowl-shaped effect, where it started out pretty strong, and then it immediately started dipping, and then it took up in the last couple episodes and rose again. So that's just kind of interesting metric comparison between the two shows, where like it looks like even if Rings of Power beat House of the Dragon based on the Nielsen numbers they have, that going into like season 2, it's almost certain that House of the Dragon's gonna end up probably significantly above Rings of Power by the time both seasons are ended. There's also something about the overlap. So what they discovered is that 40% of House of the Dragon viewers also watched Rings of Power, while 35% of Rings of Power viewers also watched House of the Dragon. That just shows that, if the numbers are higher for Rings of Power, that kind of makes sense.
They were both like super hyped fantasy, also well-known fantasy IPs. It makes sense that there'd be crossover there. It'd be weird if there wasn't, let's just say.
Yeah. And then the largest demographic ages. So basically they divided everything up into different age demographic groups. And the largest audiences for each show were quite different as well. House of the Dragon's largest audience was 18 to 34, and Rings of Power's largest audience was the over 50 crowd. So that kind of surprised me a little bit, just because Rings of Power is much less like explicit than House of the Dragon. And a big part of that is they were saying they were trying to make something that was a bit more in the all ages area, that they could appeal more towards families and stuff. And for it to skew so far above, to go to like 50 and above as the average audience, surprises me a little bit, but it also kind of makes sense because the people that are really into Lord of the Rings are going to be a bit more aged up than the people who are really into like Game of Thrones, because just going by the movies and not even thinking about the books, the Lord of the Rings movies came out quite a while before Game of Thrones came out, So It makes sense that the age would be skew a little bit higher for that reason. But that's it. Those are the numbers from Nielsen comparing those two shows. Our next news story, Seth Rogen is set to star in and also write and direct with his partner Evan Goldberg a new yet to be titled Apple TV Plus series that's going to be about a legacy Hollywood studio trying to survive in the modern competitive market. I guess this is Apple TV Plus's next prestige drama.
I'm guessing so. Yeah, probably. I don't know. We'll see how that turns out.
Something else for me to check out in reruns once Vince Gilligan's show hits Apple TV Plus.
Yeah, there you go.
And I'm forced to subscribe against my wishes.
Yeah.
And then this news story, we're only really talking about because it's relevant to today's podcast specifically, based on who it's about.
Little relevant. A little bit relevant.
There's a director named Eric Appel, and he just
no relation to Apple TV Plus.
Yeah, a different spelling. Yeah.
Yeah.
He just recently directed a little movie that we're going to talk about today called Weird Al Yankovic Story.
He also did the original sketch or Funny or Die that the movie's based on.
Yeah, that's kind of his background is doing kind of in that comedy space. He is now set to write and direct a movie called Stepdude, which is for Sony. This was originally being developed as a movie called Oh Hell No that was set to star Ice Cube and Jack Black. This was famous because Ice Cube backed out of the film when COVID was starting up because he refused to get vaccinated, and that was the movie production company's standard, is that like everybody working on the film had to be vaccinated. So you might have heard about Ice Cube backing out of a project last minute because of a vaccine mandate. That was this movie. It was originally going to be called Oh Hell No. The concept was about two similarly aged men. In this case, it was Ice Cube and Jack Black. We don't know who's involved in the cast. Apparently, Jack Black's still involved in the movie, but not necessarily as a cast member. Like, he might just be as a producer. But it's about two similarly aged men going to war after one of them dates the other's mom.
Yes. So, you know, comedy gold.
Yes. We'll have to see who they end up picking for this, if Jack Black's still going to be around, if maybe Ice Cube returns, you know, I don't know. We'll have to see what ends up happening with this movie now under the watchful gaze of Eric Appel. And then lastly, for our news segment, we have a few trailers to talk about. We're only covering 2 this week. First off, The Witcher Blood Origin. What were your thoughts of this trailer?
Yeah, so this is a limited series spinoff of The Witcher. I believe it takes place in the very early in the Witcher timeline. I'm not sure about that.
I think it's the origin of Witchers. It's like where Witchers came from, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it looked okay. Like,
there's just something about the Witcher shows and this show as well. It just kind of has like a cheap look to it that I can't quite place my finger on. Like, I don't quite like know exactly what it is. I think it might have to do with like costuming and props and stuff that just don't necessarily, they look kind of like Hercules and Xena quality props and stuff and settings. Whereas, like, we've just been spoiled by stuff like House of the Dragons and Lord of the Rings, which are, like, way, way higher production value, you know?
Yeah.
And so it just
exactly.
feels weird, like, stepping back into this kind of, like, syndicated mid-90s quality type show. It makes it even all the more apparent.
Yeah, it looks like, it's funny because, like, it looks like it wants to be, like, bigger than its budget is allowing it to be.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think that was the case with Witcher too. When we talked about Witcher before with all the stuff that went on with Henry Cavill, and my basic impression is that Witcher's not that great of a show. Henry Cavill is a fucking amazing actor that pulled in an amazing performance as an amazing character in an okay show. You know? And now we have something that's in that universe, but it's pre-Henry Cavill. So we don't have Henry Cavill in it to light everything up for us. Instead, now we have Michelle Yeoh. And I'm a Michelle Yeoh fan. I mean, I think she's great.
She's a great actress, so like,
I don't know if she's got the passion for the material that Henry Cavill did.
I don't know, but
we'll have to see.
I don't think she's going to be the problem with this. The problem is going to come down mostly to the writing and the budget.
Yeah, I agree. I think if this turns out to be good or not, I think is largely based on what we've seen, because it already looks like it's failing in some areas. Based on what we've seen, I think if it succeeds, it's going to be if they have a good fight choreographer.
Yeah.
Because they got Michelle Yeoh, which means if they get a good fight choreographer on that, and even if it looks kind of cheap and the special effects don't look great and the props don't look great, if we have like amazing fight scenes and stuff, then that could make up for a lot of that. If we don't, then this is going to be kind of cheesy and not really that great. We'll have to see what ends up becoming of it. But yeah, I'm like the opposite of cautiously optimistic. I'm like pessimistically looking forward to it. I don't know. What would be the way to say that? And we got one other big trailer this week. Just today, it came out as we're recording this. A new trailer for Fire Emblem Engage. I have to say, first off, before we get into anything else, I don't know if I necessarily like the character designs and the costumes and all the kind of stuff like that are going on in this game. But graphically, like fidelity-wise, it looks super clean. Like surprisingly so. Like it just looks really good. It looks like maybe one of the best looking Switch games, I think. Like just from that standpoint alone. What are your thoughts on this trailer?
It looks good. It looks cool. I do like the story beats that they showed in the trailer. It's interesting that like you start off, I guess in the trailer, like it showed off, you start off like summoning Marth to your side. And then by the end of the trailer, it's like the villains flip him on you and he becomes evil. I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. That's a wrinkle I didn't see coming.
Yeah,
So,
I think
it looks like it's gonna be fun.
I think I'm more optimistic about this than I was before. I still have that like kind of lingering concern about like I just don't like crossover games, I think. You know, besides something like Smash Bros, which is a completely different category, but like when it's like a story-based game that's like a crossover game, usually like that comes with like I don't know, it just means like the story's not going to be that great usually. But we've kind of had this weird year where we've actually had a lot of crossover games, and it's almost like they're kind of taking the multiverse approach, you know? Like, Bayonetta 3 has like this multiverse component to it. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 had this like weird crossover multiverse thing going on too. And I mean, I haven't beaten Bayonetta 3 yet, and some people have been complaining about the story, but in general, like, I think it works a lot more than
it's
what it
so
holds.
hot right now.
I just think that my concern about it was much bigger before. And like, now that I'm watching this trailer, my concern's kind of dampened a little bit. Like, it's just kind of like, okay, I'm not as concerned as I was before about the crossover aspect of the game. I'm still a little concerned, but not as much. And it's allowing me to kind of really take in just how good the game looks, you know?
It does
from
look
like a visual perspective.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I'm holding out hope that it's good. I'll get it. Unless something comes out that just makes it look atrocious. Like they just announce it's like a straight up like live service game, and like out of nowhere they find it's like the successor to Fire Emblem Heroes or something. I'm gonna be unless that ends up happening, I think I'll for sure be getting this game.
Nice. Yeah, me too. That's
it for our news segment, and now we're gonna move on to On the Horizon. On the Horizon is where we talk about stuff that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. We're going to start things off with Welcome to Chippendales, which comes out on Tuesday, November 22nd on Hulu. This is about the exotic dance club Chippendales, but it stars Camille Nanjiani as the manager, the guy that basically started that business. So I don't know if I'm too interested in it. I think the most interesting thing to me is that Camille Nanjiani's in it. But that is coming on Tuesday, November 22nd. Then on Wednesday, November 23rd, true to its day of the week, Wednesday finally releases on Netflix. I am excited about this.
Yeah, I mean, it looks
I'm cautious, but I'm excited.
it looked decent from the trailers.
It's modern Tim Burton, so I'm cautious, but I'm still optimistic.
Exactly, it's modern Tim Burton, so.
Then, also on Wednesday, November 23rd, The Fabelmans comes to theaters. This is the new Steven Spielberg movie that's semi-autobiographical. We reacted to the trailer like a month ago, I think.
Yeah.
It looks really good. I think I'm kind of excited about this, actually.
Nice.
And then also on Wednesday, November 23rd, also coming to theaters, Bones and All. Another one we talked about. Yeah. I think we talked about the trailer in the same episode we talked about the trailer for The Fabelmans.
Probably.
But that looks really good. I'm really excited about that. Bones and All is the one with Timothée Chalamet, where he's like they're like a weird species that's kind of cannibalistic or something. It looks really interesting. And it's interesting that's coming out right the day before Thanksgiving. Then on Thursday, November 24th, Criminal Minds Evolution comes to Paramount Plus. This is a new spin-off of Criminal Minds starring, I think, a good number of the original cast are actually returning on this. This is basically kind of like a Twin Peaks The Return for Criminal Minds in a sense.
Yes.
So Murderinos, there you go. You got something for you.
Certainly what we needed.
Then here we start to get to some really exciting stuff. On Friday, November 25th on Disney Plus, the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be good. That's gonna be one for the ages.
Yeah.
I could just feel it.
And we are going to be talking about that, I think, on our next podcast. So, that's going to be exciting. Then also on Wednesday, November 30th, just 5 days later, also on Disney Plus, Willow.
Yeah, Willow's returning.
Yeah, talk about fantasy shows. I'm much more excited about Willow than I'm about The Witcher Blood Origin. I can say that.
Same. Guilty.
Yep. Then for our anime fans out there, on Thursday, December 1st, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Star Ocean hits Netflix. Where would the internet meme culture be without JoJo?
JoJo. I don't know. I haven't watched any JoJo though, so.
You've seen the memes though, right?
I've seen the memes, yeah. It's me, Dio.
Yes. JoJo's a really funny action series. It's
JoJo Jr., come back.
it's kind of the biggest name in anime right now. So if you're into anime, you'll be excited for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Star Ocean on Thursday, December 1st on Netflix. Then we have on Friday, December 2nd, the Callisto Protocol. Were you a big, did you play Dead Space? Or were you a big Dead Space fan?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, this is the
spiritual successor. Yeah.
From the original creators of Dead Space, who formed a new studio after EA shut down the Dead Space studio. I'm blanking on the name right now.
You can start with a V. I don't remember anything else.
Visceral. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, Visceral. Oh, yeah. Okay. That looks really good, actually. I saw that. It's funny because, like, I saw the trailer for the first time. I was like, this looks like it's copying Dead Space. I'm like, oh, it's from the people at Visceral who made Dead Space.
Yes. Yeah. This looks like it's copying Dead Space in the same way that Bloodstained looks like it's copying Castlevania, you know?
Yes. What makes it even funnier, like, the huge coincidence is, like, they made this, and this is happening to, like, come out around or near, like, a full-on Dead Space remake from EA.
Yeah.
Which I think is set to come out in, like, February or something.
Yeah, I mean, you could pessimistically look at it and say EA's trying to screw them over or something, but game development takes too long.
Yeah, this
is weird timing. That's just what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, that's coming out Friday, December 2nd on PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and PC. Then we have another game, Marvel's Midnight Suns, is also coming out on Friday, December 2nd, also on PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, PC, but as well on Switch.
No, Switch version is not coming out December 2nd.
Okay, it isn't.
Switch version is coming out at a later date that I don't think
that vague set. Later date that they always attach to Switch versions.
Yeah.
Anywhere from like 2 weeks to like a year after. Are you interested at all in the Midnight Suns game?
Not really.
Yeah, I can't say I am either, but I'm glad they're doing something about Midnight Suns. It's a cool,
Nintendo, the page for Midnight Suns on Nintendo's website has it releasing in 2023. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But coming out for the other systems. Second. Then we have yet another game, this time Need for Speed Unbound, also coming on Friday, December 2nd. This one for PS5, Xbox Series X, and PC.
Yeah.
This is kind of the return of Need for Speed, right? It's been gone for a little bit.
Oh, I guess it has. I don't pay too much attention to this stuff, so yeah, you're probably right about that.
Yeah. So I know some people are excited about that. Not necessarily me. I don't have a system for it yet. And then lastly, also on Friday, December 2nd, but not a game, coming to theaters, Violent Night.
This is not a game.
This is serious business. This is not a game. Violent
Night. This is the, I believe, David Harbour Santa Claus action movie?
Yes, indeed it is.
And that looks fantastic. I love it.
It's Santa Claus Die Hard.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm excited for this too.
Speaking of David Harbour, this wasn't in the news, but I saw a report today that David Harbour is going to be filming both Thunderbolts and Stranger Things Season 5 simultaneously. He said a statement, they're just going to have to share me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about both of this.
Yes.
Big David Harbour fan, and Violent Night looks really good.
Yes, it does.
But that is it for On the Horizon, and that leaves us only with our final segment, full spoilers. We're going to start things off with UHF, which was Weird Al's theatrical debut. His first movie and last movie until just this recent one.
Yeah, his first and last movie until the new one that just came out.
Yeah. This was 1989, I believe. So this is quite a long gap for him.
Yes.
But UHF, we decided to go back and watch this because we had watched Weird. And before we even decided to cover Weird, we had watched it and both really liked it and were raving about it. And we said, well, if we're going to talk about Weird, let's watch UHF. UHF again and talk about UHF.
So why not? Because I can always use a new excuse to watch UHF again. I love this movie.
I haven't watched this in decades, so I was really curious about how it holds up, and I ended up laughing my ass off.
Oh yeah, the movie's great. I've seen this movie like about a dozen times over the years.
You know what this makes me miss, like more than anything, is just kind of more like slapstick style comedy.
Yes.
Which we haven't had much of in movies. It's like weird, when they do it like in weird little things, like there's a scene where like, he's visiting his aunt at like a party or something, and she squeezes his cheek and pulls on it, and it's all like rubber and elastic.
Yeah, it's like a rubber prosthetic.
It's such a throwaway little scene, but it's really funny.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's like they could have played that straight with like her pinching his cheek and him looking like extremely uncomfortable, maybe having tears pour out of his eyes or something, show that he's in pain. But he takes a completely different approach to it, which is that his face turns into a cartoon.
Yes.
And it's fantastic.
Yes. There's a lot of stuff like that that's just kind of funny, like add-on slapstick kind of bits that we don't really see that often in movies anymore. It's
very much Weird Al humor, which I think it's a unique brand of humor.
Yeah, I think what I really dig is like the like drop on the stop on a dime, like freak out moments.
Yeah.
Where like something will just be a normal piece of conversation. All of a sudden he'll just start flipping out and slamming his head on a counter or something,
Yeah.
And it just kind of comes out of nowhere. It just goes 0 to 60 in like an instant, and just, it's really funny. And like I said, it's something we don't see that much anymore,
No, you don't see this. There's so many great bits in this. Of course, like UHF deals heavily in a subject matter that is near and dear to Weird Al's heart, and that is television. If you listen to Weird Al's music extensively, like he has basically
two main obsessions: food and television.
Yeah, food and television. He loves writing songs about food and TV shows. Yeah. and so again, this is like very Weird Al, but like the setup that he has, it allows him to do like so many jokes and parodies. First of all, like it opens with an Indiana Jones parody. He does a Rambo parody during this movie. There's
Conan the Librarian.
There's parodies of Conan and also parodies of Gandhi.
Yeah.
And 80s action movies in general. Oh, it's fantastic. The Conan the Librarian one is great. Yeah. Don't you know the Dewey Decimal System?
There's so much stuff in this. It's just great.
God.
It's interesting watching a pre-Kramer Michael Richards.
Yeah, Michael Richards.
Hamming it up like crazy.
Oh, hamming up like, and putting in a fantastic performance too.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy too because like his character is such a major character in the show, this movie, that it really wouldn't have worked if Michael Richards didn't turn in the performance he did.
I think what's so interesting about UHF and movies of its ilk is that like the villains, they're horrible people.
Oh yeah, they're horrible.
But they're mostly like sane, and like all of the protagonists are just straight up lunatics.
I'd argue the villains are lunatics too. I mean, they're either like incredibly stupid or like cartoonishly like evil. The main villain, he's like this cartoonish 80s like villain turned to like 11 to like the most absurd degree.
Kept making me think of Trump the whole time.
Yes.
His son, his RJ Fletcher Jr.,
Yeah, like Trump Jr. Yeah, it's funny because like at the beginning when they're introduced and he's berating him, you don't know who these characters are at first. Like, he's berating, like, an employee, and then he says, but Dad!
Yeah.
It's like, that's the punchline. It's just, it's hilarious, because, like, that comes out of nowhere, like...
Yeah. Oh god, I just love this movie. I loved all the like the weird little sketches. I love the way that like at a certain point after he took over the studio, it seemed like the entire movie had just evolved into just sketch after sketch after sketch. Like it just turned into a sketch ensemble, And then it somehow found its way back into a narrative.
Yes. They do a lot of sketches with the programming on the station that they put together, but they do manage to keep it on a narrative track. It doesn't just turn into a sketch comedy show like halfway through the movie. Yeah. And you gotta give them credit for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it would have been very easy to just like fill out the movie, just have the movie be a series of sketches and then that's it.
Yeah, definitely. I love this movie. I had such fond memories of it, and I was so worried that it wasn't going to hold up. And I went back and there were parts I was just like rolling laughing so hard.
Oh, yeah.
And like I said, there's parts of this movie that are just, they weren't super common in the past, but like you'd get movies like this in the past, like besides just this, you know? And now it seems like I haven't seen something like this in ages.
Yeah, it seems like this particular brand of comedy has been out of style for a while.
Yeah, definitely. So it's so exciting to see this again, and I was really happy that it ended up living up to my memories of it. So anybody who wants to watch this that didn't watch it along with us, it is on the Roku channel. That's like the easiest way to watch it. That is
Was it on
ads,
the Roku
but
channel?
It's free. Yes.
I watched this on YouTube, it's also on YouTube with ads, but it's free.
Yeah.
That's secret. I have an ad blocker, and it blocked all the ads, so like I got to watch it with no ads for free on YouTube.
But yeah, there's it's on a bunch of ad-supported platforms. It's not on like Netflix or anything. You have to watch it on something like YouTube or something like the Roku channel. But it's pretty easy to find. You could also buy or rent it on any of the like major platforms like Amazon and stuff. I think it only costs like $1 more to buy it than it does to rent it on like Amazon.
And honestly, like
$3.99 to rent it and $4.99
this
to buy
movie's
it.
worth owning. This movie is worth adding to your film collection.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
In my opinion.
It's a great little film, and it's as I was watching it, as I was like finishing up the movie, I decided there's something I have to pitch. And this isn't something I'm gonna do because I don't have the mental energy to pull this off at this time. But I think that as fans, we should get together, make a massive movement, and find a way to collectively buy the rights to UHF from MGM. And just give it to Weird Al for his next birthday.
Give all the rights to Weird Al.
Give him 100% of the rights to UHF, and then encourage him to make a sequel series about that UHF channel becoming a streaming service.
Right, yes.
We need that in our lives. Come on, Weird Al. You're our only hope.
I was thinking about that. I was thinking I'd love to see an actual sequel to UHF.
Yeah.
It'd be so fun, but
I want to go and dig up, I think I may have seen like an episode or so, but I want to dig up the Weird Al show because I know some of the characters actually return, like Cooney, the karate teacher, is in, when I noticed this when I was putting the show notes together. Well, at least he is. Cause it showed, I was looking up the actor, like when I was putting the show notes together, I looked up the actor, Gide Watanabe, and it showed him playing the role of Cooney in the Weird Al TV show.
Interesting.
So,
I've seen a few episodes of that, but I haven't seen a whole lot of that.
Yeah, same. I think I've seen like an episode or two here or there. I don't really remember it that well. I don't really know where you can find it now. I need to look that up, but it's just kind of interesting that re-show. So maybe there is kind of a bit of a sequel within the TV series to some extent. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's it for UHF. Just a trip down memory lane there. And now we're going to move on to the modern, and we're going to talk about Weird, the Al Yankovic story, which as we mentioned earlier is directed by Eric Appel.
Yes, this was based off a sketch that Eric Appel did for Funny or Die, which was doing a parody of musical biopics that have gotten like so popular, especially in recent years. Mm-hmm. This sketch actually is like about 9 years old, possibly older, because it was uploaded 9 years ago to YouTube. I don't know like how long it was on Funny or Die's website before they uploaded it to YouTube, but
that's like when I would watch like a music reactor react to like, Closer by Nine Inch Nails, and they're like, oh, this song's 10 years old because they're looking at the date it was published on YouTube. It's like, no, it's a lot older than that.
Yeah. So my point is this is quite old now. This is like about a decade old, this sketch, and if you go back and rewatch this mock trailer that was made about a decade ago, you notice like most of the stuff in here made it into the actual movie that they did. Mm-hmm. The actors are different. The original sketch had Gary Coleman as Weird Al's father, had Mary Steenburgen as his mother. Yeah. It had Aaron Paul as Weird Al, which I thought was a funny choice. And, Patton Oswalt as Dr. Demento.
Patton Oswalt's in this as well, but he's like just a small cameo.
He's a small cameo. Oh, Weird Al as the music manager.
Yeah.
Which funny that casting weirdly made it to the actual movie.
Yeah, that's funny with Will Forte playing his brother.
Yes. And what else? Oh, Olivia, what's her name?
Olivia Wilde's in it, isn't she?
Olivia Wilde, yeah, as Madonna in this trailer. And I'm watching the trailer now, and it's funny because, like, they got Aaron Paul playing Weird Al in this thing. And there's a scene where he's at the bar, and I swear to God, the bartender is the actor who played Badger in Breaking Bad.
Could be.
It is. It looks exactly like him. So I'm like, oh, okay. That's weird. But yeah, this was a fairly popular sketch, and I was Weird Al doing the interview rounds for this film, said the reason they made the film now is because, like, the sketch was very popular. He would show this mock trailer, like, at his shows. He said people would ask him, okay, when are we getting this movie? And he said, you know, like, after a while, like, him and Eric Appel just started seriously talking about doing it.
Yeah, Funny or Die has done that with a few things, I think. Didn't they also do a trailer for the Art of the Deal one before they ended up doing, like, the full-length one with Johnny Depp?
Oh, that's what, they did a full-length one?
Yeah, they did a full-length Art of the Deal movie with Johnny Depp playing Trump.
Jesus Christ. I remember the trailer. I thought that was freaking hilarious back then.
Yeah. So they've done this kind of thing before. Like, that was one of the best things about Funny or Die when it was around, was that it was all about the audacity of something. It was all about, like, we're going to take this ridiculous concept and, like, hey, why not make it a full length movie? You know?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Why not take this sketch and stretch it out to a movie? And they had the audacity to do that. And that was one of the best things about Funny or Die, is like how far they would take the joke, you know?
Right. And I think another thing that encouraged them to go ahead and do this was they had this idea, and then Bohemian Rhapsody came out.
Yeah.
And I think
in that one year, we got like 3 big music bags.
Yeah,
we also got like that Rocket Man movie about Elton
Yeah, we got
John.
the Rocket Man. Bohemian Rhapsody, they've said, was a huge influence on this.
Yeah.
They saw that, they said, you know, that's ridiculous. That really spurred them on to go ahead and do this film. And I gotta say, it's a wonderful film. I really enjoyed this film. Anybody, like, should go without say off the bat, this is not a straight, like, accurate accounting of Weird Al's life.
Oh, not at all.
Like, no.
In a way, it kind of reminds me of, did you ever watch, like, Metalocalypse?
Some of that, yeah.
But you know how, like, the whole concept was just, like, it was the biggest band in the world, and it's, like, metal is, like, a genre that, like, never gets that big.
Oh,
so,
yeah,
like, the
yeah.
idea of, like, this band being, like, bigger than life itself was, like,
death
ridiculous.
metal band being, like, yeah, like, the most popular band on the planet, yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and that makes it funny, and it's similar in the way they did it with Weird Al as a parody musician, being, like, the biggest musician in the world.
Yeah,
you know?
They really, like, exaggerate Weird Al's success. Weird Al was, don't get me wrong, he was successful in the 80s, like, he was hardly, like, the biggest artist, you know, working in music, you know, like.
Yeah.
His stuff occasionally got play on MTV.
Yeah.
Like, this exaggerates to, like, where he's the most famous, successful person working in show business.
The Beat It joke, where he decided not to do parodies anymore and to make an original song, and his original song was Eat It.
Yes, Eat It, yeah. Eat It was an original song according to this, and then Michael Jackson parodied it.
With Beat It, which is, it was great because when Daniel Radcliffe was freaking out about Michael Jackson parodying and getting upset about it, like, he was like, this isn't even about food.
Yeah, this isn't even about food. And he's like, why would somebody take somebody else's music and change the lyrics or change the words?
Yeah, it's so funny. Oh, God.
Oh, I love that gag. At first I was kind of confused because the scene was like Dr. Demento talking to Al about, like, writing original music instead of parodies. Then he comes up with Eat It, and I'm like, wait, what? and then as it's going, like, I start seeing, oh, okay, they're playing it off like Beat It wasn't made. This is the song.
It's funny because, like, while that was playing, I was getting distracted by my own thoughts because Weird Al has done an occasional original song, and it's usually because he can't get the rights to something or doesn't get permission to use it. And an example is, I remember when the Off the Deep End album came out, Weird Al's Off the Deep End, which is a parody of Nevermind from Nirvana. Mm-hmm. And one of the songs on it that was, like, my favorite was You Don't Love Me Anymore.
Yes.
Which was supposed, it was supposed to be a parody of, that Extreme song. What was that song called? I can't remember the name of it, but it was that acoustic song from the band Extreme that was really huge. I can't remember the name of it anymore. But anyways, it was supposed to be a parody of that. They couldn't get the rights to parody it, so they made an original acoustic song and put those lyrics to it. And so I kept getting distracted in my own headspace because that used to be my favorite Weird Al song of going like, oh, are they going to talk about this? Like, that's weird. You know, that wasn't that big of a song. It didn't have a music video or anything. It wasn't huge. And then, yeah, it was all set up for this Michael Jackson joke, you know?
Oh, yeah. Wait, which song did it have a music video?
You Don't Love Me Anymore.
Oh, that has a music video.
It does?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Oh, yeah. It's got Robert Goulet in it and everything. It's fantastic. You should look it up and watch it because it's a really funny video, too.
I bet it was directed by Jay Levy, who was the director of UHF. He directed almost all of Weird Al's music videos.
Anyway, yeah, back to the movie. So I loved that joke. Like, that was a curveball to me, that entire, like, joke conceit. And, also, like, all the stuff, like, with Madonna and, Pablo Escobar.
Can we just take a moment to talk about how good Evan Rachel Wood was as Madonna?
Oh,
I couldn't even picture it as Evan Rachel Wood. Like, no. I'm very aware of Evan Rachel Wood. I liked Westworld, and she was, like, the lead in that. I've seen her in a bunch of other things.
She's a great actress.
I know her from a lot of things. I completely lost her in this role. Yeah. I completely lost her in this role. Like, I couldn't see Evan Rachel Wood. I could only see Madonna. Yeah. It was amazing. It's amazing that for a parody performance that she nailed it that hard, you know?
Yes. Which shows, like, how much of a professional that she is. Because she didn't just go, okay, this is just a goofy comedy. So she put the effort in. Like, she put in, like, she was being asked to play Madonna in a serious drama pick. Like, that's the level she put into it. I should also say...
like those recent Marilyn Monroe movies and how they had, like, all the attention put on them from the actresses. It was, like, that level of a performance, but for a parody.
I should also say Daniel Radcliffe's Weird Al is also fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. He nailed it. We've mentioned it before, but Daniel Radcliffe did a phenomenal job, not in this movie just, but, like, in the sense that he went from being this child actor completely identified for a single role that was, like, a huge or larger than life role in Harry Potter, and has now, like, somehow transitioned that into, like, a brilliant comedy career. And Daniel Radcliffe deserves just loads of props just for that, for being able to do that as a whole career trajectory, let alone the movie, which he was, of course, amazing as Weird Al.
Oh yeah, 100%.
There's two other scenes I really want to talk about here. So, first off, I loved the scene with the accordion salesman.
Oh, yes.
Thomas Lennon from The State, which was my favorite sketch comedy show when I was a kid. I fucking loved The State. When I was, like, in high school, I was obsessed with that show. And he shows up as this accordion salesman, and just the way the father shows up and just relentlessly beats him.
Yes.
Out of nowhere. Like, that's probably the closest thing to a UHF moment in this movie, I think.
Yes, yeah, that's the closest thing.
It was just hilarious. Just relentlessly beats them. Then they have this whole family drama moment. The whole time they're having this drama moment, the guy's like gasping for breath and coughing up blood on the floor. Oh god, it's so good. So good. That scene I needed to mention. And the other scene I need to mention is the pool party.
The pool party is one of the highlights of the film just because
the cameos,
all the cameos, man. It's cameos galore and they're all fantastic.
And they're like double cameos because they're like, you have these great comedic actors and performers playing the roles, but then they're also playing the roles of these very iconic figures from the 80s, and they're not even necessarily like the most famous figures.
Conan
a lot of them
O'Brien
are like,
as Andy Warhol.
Yeah, a lot of them are like these very obscure but very iconic characters from like the 80s, like Divine.
Yes.
Divine was this drag performer that was in a lot of like John Waters movies. Not a very well-known figure, but at the same time infamous and iconic. And you instantly can spot her. You're like, oh shit, that's Divine. Like immediately. She's so iconic that you can like pick that out in a second. So it's like this weird double cameo effect. Like you mentioned, Conan O'Brien playing Andy Warhol. That's like 2 cameos, because one cameo is you have Conan O'Brien in your movie, and the other is there's Andy Warhol in the movie, you know? And so you get kind of this double side on that. It was really cool. So many great ones. Pee Wee Herman.
Yes, Pee Wee Herman, played by
Jorma Tacone from The Lonely Island. Yeah.
From The Lonely Island, yes. Really fantastic Pee Wee Herman, by the way.
Dimitri Martin is Tiny Tim. That was great. Paul F. Tompkins as Gallagher. That was a good one. Yeah. That's a sad, it just happened to happen like right before Gallagher passed away, just like this last week. So
yeah,
it's kind of like our last shot at seeing Gallagher, you know, as being portrayed by Paul F. Tompkins and Weird. I love the Queen's bassist, John Deacon, was played by the Polka Dot Man from the Suicide Squad.
Yes. I knew it. I was like, oh yeah, that guy is familiar. Yeah, and of course, Jack Black as Wolfman Jack.
Yeah. Like, from now on, let's just call him Wolfman Jack Black.
Yeah, Wolfman Jack Black. Of course, Jack Black always steals the show.
That was a great scene where they put Al on the spot to eventually do the parody of Another One Bites the Dust, Another One Rides the Bus, his parody. And I love at the end, and you mentioned that this was heavily influenced by Bohemian Rhapsody, the Queen biopic.
Yes.
Cause I love, like, at the end, after he blows everybody away, John Deacon, like, makes this very sincere, like, plea to Al. He's like, join us on stage with Queen. We're gonna do this concert, Live Aid, which is the big concert from the end of Bohemian Rhapsody, and probably the most famous Queen concert of all time, you know?
Right, yeah.
And makes this big deal of like this very sincere, like, you know, earnest, like, you can join us on stage and perform that song. And Al just looks at him and goes, no!
Yeah, no!
Get out of here! It's just like mocks him.
They really play up this version of Weird Al as being like this egotistical jerk.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, the cameos just went so far, like we were mentioned. I mean, down to like a waiter being played by Josh Groban, a radio DJ by Seth Green. These are like unnamed characters. ER doctor played by Lin-Manuel Miranda, you know? Huge people playing these tiny cameos, you know?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, the cast is like stacked with cameos. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely loved it. Is there anything else that you want to get in on? Favorite moments from Weird?
Oh, geez.
I think you were going to start talking about Pablo Escobar a bit ago.
Well, yeah. Well, the stuff with like the Pablo Escobar, so I loved like the Madonna storyline, how like she ends up replacing Pablo Escobar as like drug kingpin.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the movie, she has like Weird Al assassinated in like 1985. So like he dies at the end of the movie.
Yeah, my friend pointed out he had watched it. He was talking about how Weird Al had a really troubled time making UHF. Like, he had a very bad time making the movie because of Hollywood interference and stuff. And he looked at that moment as going like, yeah, before UHF was made. So they killed Weird Al before UHF. And it was kind of like maybe his way of dealing with that. I don't know if that's the case, but I just think that's kind of a funny aside, you know? Because Weird Al didn't really blow up until like the early 90s, you know? That's when he got like huge. And so here they portray him as being like the biggest star in the world, and he dies in 85.
Yes.
Which makes it even funnier.
And he anachronistically releases Amish Paradise like in the mid 80s instead of like the 90s when that song actually came out.
Oh, with Coolio in the audience.
Yeah, with Coolio in the audience.
That kind of made me a little bit sad because everybody knows about the kind of feud between Coolio and Weird Al that happened because of Amish Paradise and a miscommunication that happened between the two of them. Before he died, Coolio did some interviews where he talked about that he was wrong about his objection to Weird Al using it, and that he actually really liked the song and thought it was funny. And I read interviews with Weird Al where he learned about that afterwards and like was really touched by it, that it was able to get some closure on that aspect of his life. It would have been kind of cool if they would have been able to, you know, maybe bury the hatchet directly between each other before Coolio passed. And, you know, then that moment would have meant even more, I think. But, it was, in a funny movie, that scene was a little bit sad for me because of that.
Yeah, definitely.
But I love the way they wrote an Amish narrative into the story with Weird Al's dad.
With Weird Al's dad, like, being Amish, like, surprise twist. Again, nothing close to, like, being true, but
nowhere near the truth, but hilarious.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's pretty much it. Oh, we were mentioning the Pablo Escobar story. What about the Carrie twist at the end of that with Madonna visiting Weird Al's grave?
Weird Al's grave, and like his zombie hand grabs her. That was the teaser for the sequel.
That was straight up. That's the final scene of Carrie, the Stephen King movie from was it from the 70s or the early 80s?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's such a weird little reference to throw in, you know? Like, it would have made more sense to throw that in like, UHF, but to throw that in a movie made in 2022 is kind of funny.
Yeah, it is. I liked it. As for which movie's better, I think I prefer UHF, but Weird Al Yankovic Story was a very pleasant film to have available to watch.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, as we were mentioning, UHF is the kind of movie that we just don't see anymore. And even with Weird, it's still not UHF. It still doesn't play out like UHF. Like, it doesn't have that sensibility to it. So, because of that, I think largely, I still prefer UHF to Weird. But they were both great, and Weird inspired me to rewatch UHF. So, that's a great thing.
So, yeah, that's another plus to that, yeah. Here's to being weird.
Yes. Cheers to being weird. How about that?
Yes. There we go.
That's it for our full spoiler segment. Before we go, we have one other thing. We have some sad news to go on. We already mentioned a passing during the Weird discussion, unfortunately, but we have another actor who passed away recently, and that is Kevin Conroy. We know him, at least for me, my knowledge of Kevin Conroy is primarily as Batman from Batman the Animated Series and a lot of other Batman properties, but primarily for me it was Batman the Animated Series. That was like in my childhood. It's a big part of my childhood. I loved that show. I loved his performance as Bruce Wayne and Batman in that show. He passed away recently, and just wanted to kind of pour out some wine for Kevin Conroy.
He was a titan of especially of like our childhood, especially my childhood. Anybody who watched Batman the Animated Series after school, like, you know, and he's been
racing to get home from the bus so you don't miss the first minute of that, you know, show.
And that show was so good. It's a classic. And he wasn't just that. He was Batman in so many other projects too. The Batman Arkham games. He basically became the voice of Batman in general.
Yeah.
And his work is so iconic. It's sad that we lost him to cancer, but his influence, his work will live on forever. So
let's just give a real quick fuck you to cancer.
Yeah.
We're taking so many people we love. So yeah, fuck you, cancer. So we miss you, Kevin Conroy.
Yeah, definitely. We could take solace in the fact that his work, his influence will live on forever.
Yes, definitely a sad moment to end out a more comedic podcast. But that is the end of our podcast. In 2 weeks, we are not doing a podcast next week because next week is Thanksgiving week, so we're taking that week off. But in 2 weeks, we are going to be returning with the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special. That's what we're going to be talking about. Yep,
I'm excited about anything James Gunn does at this point. So
yeah, James Gunn's fantastic, and his track record is amazing. And this is his penultimate Marvel project before permanently moving to DC.
Right. Yes. This is kind of like his in-between story between Guardians 2 and Guardians 3.
His setup for Guardians 3, which will be his grand finale in the MCU before he completely fits into his role as the head of DC, which, I mean, he's already filmed all of this, so he's already moved on. He's already the head of DC. But as far as like us watching stuff, this is going to be our penultimate experience of James Gunn in the MCU. So I'm definitely excited for that. And that is coming in 2 weeks is when we're going to discuss that. So thank you everybody for listening to this week's podcast. You can reach us on Twitter. I am at Tyson Gifford. Will is at Voxel Hero. That is the best way to reach us, through Twitter. You can also check out our website, thetotalscreen.com. If you go to the container story for any of the podcast episodes, open it up, you'll find links to everything relevant to the podcast, the direct link to the RSS feed for the podcast to get it, directly sent to you. Also links to where we are on Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast, where you can also just look us up if you want. Our podcast can be found on any major podcast client of choice. Just check that out. But thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.